Yo, what's going on YouTube? Kpaceguy here. Welcome back to... Oh, I see we have some new faces in the audience there. Tommy, Billy, I recognize you, Billy. I see you back there. Jessica, welcome to the channel. I see we got some new faces in the audience that aren't subscribed. We'll take a couple seconds just to go ahead and get subscribed. Hit that big red button right there. Smack that bell notification on the side of it to get notified for any other videos I may be posting. Since you're here now, might as well go ahead and subscribe. So I'll wait for you guys. Just give a couple seconds. Welcome to the channel. Jessica, I do see you back there. Tammy, good to see you again. Saw you guys in the last video. Do not subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that bell to be notified for the videos. Alright, now that we got our new guys here subscribed and ready to go, I want to talk to you guys about speakers with integrated subwoofers. So, for example, Definitive Technology, Golden Ear, they have subs built into their towers. And what that allows you to do is two really good things. One is to limit the footprint of your overall system. So instead of having, your floor standing speakers and then having separate subwoofers across the room, you can kind of minimize that package, especially if you have a wife or maybe even a husband that doesn't want all that clutter, that big box in the corner of the room or somewhere like that. Integrated subwoofers allow you to use less of your floor space and still, have subwoofers. So that's one really good important thing about having integrated subwoofers inside of your towers. But another thing is, you get kind of free subwoofers in a way. So if you get anything from Definitive Technology nowadays, anything from Golden Ear and some other companies, they have integrated subs inside. And what that allows you to do is get dual subs. And most people will vouch for having two subs or more in your system. Some people get away with one. But you get two power subwoofers, and they range between 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches. And so when you have two subwoofers, you are able to, even that frequency response around the room a little bit more. So instead of having, a peak over here on the side of the room and then a null over here, you can kind of make that meet in the middle. And so that's two really good reasons to get speakers that have integrated subs in there. And when I say integrated subs, I don't mean big 8-inch or 10-inch woofers at the bottom or the side or sometimes just in the front baffle. But I'm talking about actual subwoofers with plate amps on the back. So Definitive Technology has some, Golden Ear has some, and they actually sound really, really good. But a lot of questions that I get, how are speakers going to work with integrated subwoofers if you have a subwoofer already, a power subwoofer, a separate one? Can you mix two subwoofers together? etc. So we're going to go ahead and kind of talk about that. So subwoofers are a hard thing. It's a hard thing to calibrate. It's super difficult. Probably one of the most difficult things to kind of get correct because there's so many different things that that subwoofers rely on to make them sound good. Room size, room shape, placement, EQ, nulls, peaks, overall volume. There's so many different components to making a subwoofer sound pretty good. And so a lot of people say don't mix different subwoofers, whether it's a 10-inch with a 12-inch, a sealed with a ported, SVS with a paradigm, things like that. It's really hard to calibrate subs because there's so many different kind of technological things you have to follow in order to get good sound. So what do you do if you have Definitive Technology speakers right now that have integrated subs? Should you stick with those subs? Should you get a different sub and turn off those subs? Or can you run those in conjunction with another sub? And you can kind of do all of them, but there's kind of some rules that we need to talk about if we're going to do these things. So for me personally, if I had speakers with integrated subs inside, I would probably test out those subs first without any other subwoofers. I would run them by themselves, just try to hear what they sound like, how low do they get, how loud do they get, do they blend well with the rest of the speaker. And I would also test how good they sounded where they're placed at, because you guys know the downside to having subwoofers in your towers is that you can't pick where your subwoofers are placed in the room, and that may or may not be a good thing. So if you have Definitive Technology speakers and you have them, front left and front right, that subwoofer inside may not sound very good in that particular spot, but now you're stuck with it because you can't move that speaker anywhere. And so that's a reason why you may want to disconnect that subwoofer and use an external one. If you're having issues with placement, things like that, you may want to get into a separate subwoofer and try to calibrate it that way. You may be able to use the floor standing subwoofers with a second subwoofer or a third subwoofer, external subwoofer, and kind of maybe put your external subwoofer in the back of the room. So if you have your front left and right subwoofers in your speakers and then you power two more in the back, you may be able to even that response out just a little bit more. Now, if you're going to use separate subwoofers, I kind of recommend using the same size driver inside of your external subwoofer as is in your front, left, and right subwoofers in your towers. It's going to be kind of hard because I believe most, if not all, subwoofers inside the towers are sealed boxes. So I know Definitive Technology, they use passive radiators to kind of intensify that low end since they're not ported speakers. Let's say that I have Definitive Technology speakers right now, and they have a 10-inch subwoofer in each floor standing speaker. And then I have my PB4000s here that are 13.5 inch, and they're way more powerful, they're ported. Well, how do I calibrate that with my system? Well, the first thing I would do is completely turn off my PB4000s and listen to what the floor standing speakers are doing themselves. How good is that driver? Am I missing that low end? Things like that. I would just try to figure out what kind of speaker am I dealing with. And so that 10-inch speaker, I know Definitive Technology says it gets pretty low, just under 20 hertz, things like that, which is good. But we gotta test that out in your room, because that response is gonna change depending on what room you're in and how loud that response is gonna be. It's also gonna change as well. So the first thing you wanna do is just assess yourself with the speakers that you have. What do they sound like? Break them in, make sure they sound really, really good as possible. Calibrate them, EQ them, and then give them a good test, a good movie that you're familiar with, a good bass track, and a music that you're really familiar with. Just give them a listen and see what they're doing. And then, if you feel like you need more bass, see if you can incorporate your other subwoofers that you have. I wouldn't want to get Definitive Technology speakers and then turn off my PB4000 because I spent a good $1 on these speakers. I don't want to just put them in the closet, so of course I'm going to want to use them. And so I would probably plug them in, and again I would plug them in probably behind the listening position or somewhere on the side of it, because I don't want my PB4000 subwoofer here and then my floor stander, and then over here is a PB4000 and then my floor stander. I don't want all my subwoofers to be across the wall there, so I'm going to want to have them adjacent to each other. So I would probably plug in my PB4000s in the back, leave my floor standing speaker subwoofers in the front, and then try to volume match it, try to calibrate it. I would probably turn my frequencies, my crossover for my PB4000s much lower than what I have them on the floor standing speakers. And here's why. With the floor standing speakers having subwoofers, you can pretty much call them a 4-inch speaker. So all the frequencies are going to be able to be taken care of from that subwoofer. Of course, being a sealed box with passive radiators, you're going to be a little bit low on the low end output. And so I would use my PB4000s. I probably cross it over right where the weak point comes in at my subwoofers in my floor standers, so that my PB4000s can pick up where my floor standers can't. Also, PB4000s getting extra low, under 16 hertz with some authority, being ported, is going to give me a lot more output at a low volume, so that I don't have to work my front subwoofer so hard. And so, of course, I would still cross my subwoofers over at 120 hertz for the floor standing speakers, but I wouldn't cross my subwoofers in the back at that frequency. I would go ahead and change that to something a little bit lower, just to kind of even out that response. I don't want to add too much bass at 80 hertz or 70 hertz or 90 hertz. I would let my PB4000s take care of the ultra low end stuff, and then let my subwoofers do what they need to do up front. That's how I'd probably calibrate my stuff. If I was going to use other subwoofers to go with that, that's how I would do it. Now, if I can't get my subwoofer to agree with the floor standing speakers, I may just act as not having subwoofers in my floor standers at all. I would just completely turn that amp off and just use my external subwoofers as if I didn't have subwoofers in my floor standers at all. That may be the best, but my advice to you guys, if you're looking at Definitive Technology or Golden E or anybody who has subwoofers inside their cabinets, give them a listen first. What are they good at? What do they sound best at? Are they really good with music but not movies? Do they hit low? Give yourself a good minute to really, get a relationship with your subwoofers so that you know what they're capable of and what they lack in. And if you already have existing subwoofers, your next step is to try to integrate those subwoofers with the ones that are built in. And if you find it to be too difficult, maybe turn those subwoofers off inside your floor standing speakers. There may be times where your floor standing speakers inside of your cabinet sound better than your external speakers, and if that's the case, you want to use those as your primary subs. Use those instead, turn off the external ones. Unless you have ones that are sufficient enough to play with, then use those as well. But Sometimes the floor standing speakers have better subwoofers than what you may be having currently in your system. So you may be perfect with those right there. They may sound good in their position that you have them in, so you may be able to get away with them. But if you can't, try to combine the two together, your internal subwoofers, your integrated subwoofers, and then your external subwoofer that you have, your separate power subwoofers. And if you can get those two to agree with each other, I definitely recommend using them because you don't want to waste external subwoofers. And if you can't get them to agree, choose one or the other. Either use only your integrated subwoofers inside your speakers if they're good enough, or use your externals. Your externals will maybe be better because you can play with placement. You can put them where you think they sound best at. There's a lot more flexibility where you can play with them. There is no EQ for the subwoofers inside the box, inside the cabinet as of now. But of course you can still run Odyssey or MCACC from Pioneer or YPAL from Yamaha, and you can still kind of cater to those subwoofers a little bit. You still cross them over and do the same things, but you can't change their placement within the room because they're stuck inside your floor standing speaker. So again, guys, if you have floor standing speakers with subwoofers, you can play around with that. Just kind of do what sounds best. If you're looking at floor standing speakers with subwoofers, don't be afraid to get them. They will work. They will work for you whether you use the subwoofers inside or you use the ones that you already have, or you use both. It can work, but the main thing is just to play around with that. Listen to a couple movies, a couple music tracks that you guys are familiar with, and you'll figure it out. I promise you, you'll figure what sounds good. You guys are smart out there, so that's my advice to you guys. So if you found this video informative, if it helped you out just of the slightest, hit that like button, leave me down a comment below. What speakers are you using right now? Have you ever heard Defensive Technology or Golden Ear speakers? What do you guys think about integrated subwoofers inside cabinets? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Leave me a comment down below, guys, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Kpaceguy out.